Welcome to Construction Genius. This is Eric. And today, Scott Pieper of Mobilization Funding is back on the show to talk about recessions, labor, and policies. We're going to have a big picture conversation about what you can do as your particular area of the country may be going into a recession, how you can prep for that from a cash flow perspective, that you're able to ride it out, what you need to think of in terms of being flexible. And we're going to have a very good conversation at one point. It's very interesting. You got to really listen to this one about how to handle emotionally the challenge of having to lay people off, and perhaps how your competition may help you to do that. We're also going to talk about the importance of committing to your local area where you build and work in terms of influencing the flow of labor, not just throwing up your hands and saying, man, I can't find any good labor, but really doing some practical things. And I'm going to show some examples or talk about some examples from my area here in Sacramento about how construction companies and industry associations are on the front foot looking to influence for the long term the flow of labor into their companies. And then we'll also talk about policies and how you can influence policies at a local level that you can maximize your opportunity to build the types of projects that you work on and build the business that you're looking to build. It's a very practical conversation. Scott's super engaging. I want to encourage you, check out his website, check out his YouTube channel, check out his book. But we don't spend a lot of time pitching all of that stuff. You'll be thankful for that. We just spend a lot of time talking about how to run a better construction company. Enjoy my conversation with Scott. Thank you for listening to Construction Genius. And let's dive right in. This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership. Scott, welcome back to Construction Genius.
Hey, man. How's it going, Eric?
It's going very well. I think it's an interesting time in construction. There's some areas of the country that are thriving, some areas of the country that, as far as construction is concerned, they're perhaps not as busy as they could be. As you're looking at the big picture of the economy and based on the conversations you're having, what's your view on the likelihood of a recession or the way that the economic waves are impacting the industry at the moment?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm not an economist, and I've never claimed to be. But what I can say is I do see trends in how they've impacted construction and other areas. What I'll say is that there's certain places in the country right now, geographically, that are doing really well, and they're not behaving the same as others. And that could be construed as a recession or not. I think by definition, we've already been in a recession. If you go around the country and say, hey, what's that mean? Some people are like, hey, I felt this recession. And other people are like, I don't even know what you're talking about. For example, there's certain places in Tampa right now where I live locally that there's 7% and 8% interest rates, but yet new records are being set on the street every week of a house being sold. Well, why is that? And then other places, we're talking to a client who's trying to sell a piece of property and it's sitting on the market for 6, 7, 8, 10 months and hasn't had any offers, where last year it would have sold in a day. Why is that? I don't purport to know all the answers to that, but what I can tell you for sure is you need to know where you're located and why these types of things are happening. I'll give you another keen example to construction. We see lots of private projects coming out of the ground here in Tampa and in around the state of Florida, in Texas, and in the Southeast. But yet, in other parts of the country, we had clients in California or out west or in the Northeast or even some in the Midwest that are all of a sudden the project they were ready to do is getting either tabled or canceled altogether. And these aren't just like private projects that might be mixed use with some residential and retail. Of course, I'm talking about corporate office buildings and of course the mixed retail as well. I'll give you another one. What is thriving though is multifamily housing in and around your universities and colleges. There's a big push in there. So those are the types of projects that are coming out of the ground a lot. But banking and the banks are having a hard time trying to finance those projects depending on who the developers are and also depending on the geographical location and the fortitude or desire of the bank to actually lend into that space. So these are the things that I'm seeing a lot of that you have to really pay close attention to as a general contractor or a subcontractor. And we work primarily with subcontractors, our clients, but you have to really know what's going on that project before you get rolling.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was chatting with some owners yesterday, and just what you said there was interesting because one of them was telling me about how Google were planning to do a massive 80-acre mega campus that was taking over a large chunk of downtown San Jose, and they put that on the shelf. And then the other contractor I was talking to is like, yeah, man, I just landed some work with a university right down the street doing some multifamily housing. There are those pockets of the country where geographically things are struggling. But I also think it's the type of projects as well, like you hit on there. I mean, if you think about it, office buildings, shopping centers and malls, maybe even sports and recreation are down, but data centers, life sciences, logistics, transportation systems, those kinds of things. There's a sense of new economy, old economy with construction at the moment. Are you seeing that at all?
Yeah, the big segments we see, I couldn't agree with you more. You got to look geographically, what type of industries is the project servicing? And then, of course, what is it financed? What is going on? So like Amazon, UPS, TJ Maxx, they're building big centers around for logistics, for they call them their depots or their sorting facilities or their distribution centers. There's a multitude of different ones. If you go out to Arizona and you look in the Phoenix area, there's a gigantic project going on for chip manufacturing. There's a lot going on there. If you go into Atlanta, though, for example, and you look at a project maybe that Salesforce was building, Salesforce just, I don't know how many people they cut out of their team, but they just cut a lot of people from their labor force. Well, what does that mean? Well, Salesforce was a pretty big user of commercial real estate, and that's open and available. So you got to look at where you're at, what the industry is, what they're trying to serve, and really be paying attention to what the end use of those projects are before you're starting on them, or if you're counting on them to start or come out of the ground. Those are the things they need to be paying attention to.
It's interesting because your business, you work on the financial side of the business, the cash flow side of the business with your clients. What are some of the potholes or challenges that could be faced if you're on a project and then you're not going to get paid? Are you seeing that at all?
It depends on why you're not getting paid, right, is the first thing. If the project is completely financed and everything is going smooth on it, well, then no big deal. You might not get paid because you didn't perform, or you might not get paid because someone else didn't perform, or you're not getting paid because there's an engineering flaw. Those are things that I think all construction clients work with normally. But we're seeing projects that got started. Developers were ambitious. They had their equity already on the project. They already had a lot of sunk costs. They want to get it out of the ground. They're counting on their financing to come in place. When I say financing, their senior credit facility. We just had a seminar last week. We held a live event. And what I was surprised to know is I don't think a lot of the construction community necessarily understands how a big project might be financed in terms of the capital stack. When you have a bank and the signs out front, for example, saying proudly financed by such and such bank, they are only financing sometimes 65, 70, maybe at the most 80% of that project.
You mean the project itself when they see a sign out front of the project?
Yes. If you got a $50 million project, you got to know that developer's got $10 million into that in equity themselves somewhere. There might be multiple stacks. It could be $10, $15 million. What does that mean? Well, if you got $10 or $15 million and you're a developer and you have to spend that money while the project's coming out of the ground before you even get to the senior credit facility, you could do a lot of work. If you're an early site contractor or you're doing early underground plumbing, mechanical, electrical, you could easily fit into that first number of equity. And then all of a sudden you're halfway out there and there's a slowdown. Money isn't coming off. Second payout, third payout maybe it's delayed. And that senior credit facility hasn't been closed yet. That's a real concern. And all of a sudden now you're being held up payment. There could be arguments. There could be fights. There could be all kinds of stuff. Someone would say, listening to this, well, why the heck would anyone ever do that? You got to remember, no one starts a project thinking they're not going to get the financing. And sometimes these deadlines and timelines are there. These are sunk costs that are already out. What can you do? If you're a commercial contractor right now, general contractor or sub, you want to make sure that you get noticed or you can ask for verification that the senior credit facility or the loan is in place, or how is this project being financed? Is it a grant? Make sure it's in place. We just had a large contractor. I'm talking a national contractor, $7 billion general contractor. Everybody would know their name. I just don't want to mention this, but just think of all the big ones. The kind of general contractors that are building airports, okay? They got many millions of dollars out on our project, and they've got to the point where they're stopping work because the senior credit facility isn't in place yet. Now, that GC understands and knows they went at risk doing that, and they made a calculated, conscious decision. And they'll probably get the senior credit facility ultimately closed, not the general contractor, but the developer that they're working for. But they got to a stopping point. They're just not comfortable going any further at risk. But that's a very large, well-capitalized, multiple billion-dollar general contractor. But the subs underneath that might not be in the same spot. So if you're at a paid when paid or paid if paid contract, you might not get paid. That doesn't mean the general contractor didn't get paid either, but they have a different type of risk management they can handle. You want to ask. It's nothing wrong with asking, is the project financing in place?
Let me ask you, Scott, what are like 2 or 3 key questions I need to be asking as I'm bidding on the project to make sure that the money is there?
It's not so much when you're bidding on the project, it's after you've won it. Because when you're bidding on it, there's probably not in place yet. But when you've won it or in your contract, you can say something like, I have the right to verify that the financing on this overall project, how is it being financed? And I have the right to ask for, and I don't have to start work yet until there's been proof or verification that the financing has been put in place. And look, the general contractors are asking that question. So it's not an unfair question to ask. And it's certainly documented. There's nothing wrong with asking that question. Matter of fact, if you ask that question and you get some pushback on it, that would be a reason of concern. Otherwise, banks issue closings all the time. You can also look at the property address and find out if there's a note on the property already, if it's closed. Banks are always going to file their proper notifications or information in the state departments or the local townships to make sure that their collateral, the property, is collateralized. And that's public information. So you can do your own research on that too. But there's nothing wrong with asking. And then you can put some things in your contract that if there's not a senior credit facility in place or that you don't know what the financing is, you can't be thrown off that project for stopping work, or you're not in default for stopping work.
Let me ask you this. In your experience, let's talk about a contractor that is in a geographic location where there is a recession and they want to ride it out. They want to make sure that they can make it through. One of the main concerns a lot of contractors have is, man, I got to try and keep my guys busy. I got to retain that talent. What are some key strategies from a cash flow perspective that you would say are essential for a contractor to be implementing when it comes to riding through a recession?
It's a great question. I guess the first thing I would tell you is you need to know what your cash flow is for that project. What does that mean? That means, have you planned out based on what your costs are for the project and based on what the schedule is you're going to try to keep, which aligns directly to what you're asking, Eric, is how am I going to keep my labor force on this job? Obviously, if the labor force is on that job and the project is running, then it's no issue. They're doing work, you're invoicing for it, you're getting paid, you're paying them. Piece of cake. But to your point, if all of a sudden that project doesn't start or go off, now you have a choice. Keep my labor force for if and when it starts again, which is at a cost to the contractor at that point, or lay them off or have another project to put them on. What's really critical in those settings, and I would really make sure folks are doing now, is you have to use some kind of cash flow tool for you to know any project you start, not only what my costs are and what I'm going to make, but how am I going to expend those costs over the actual schedule that I'm trying to maintain. That you know, okay, if you have a $500,000 project that has $350,000 of cost in it, how are you going to spend that $350,000 on that schedule? And if you get to the 4-week mark and the project stops, what does that do to your cash flow? Do you have 2 weeks of extra float in there? Do you have a month of extra float in there? You want to know those things, and you can stress test your cash flow model by using those things, by putting those variable factors in advance prior to you starting, that you know if that happens. That gives you that wiggle room. How fast am I going to eat up my, quote, contingency that I've built into this? Or do I have the contingency I thought? That way, if something does happen, you can make quick and effective decisions. If you knew that in advance, you know you only have 2 weeks of labor extra, you can maybe lay people off right away versus wait 3 or 4 weeks and then make the choice. There's things you want to do. So that's the first thing. The second thing I would do is, depending on what your business is and how big your business is and how many projects you have going on, what other service lines you have going on, I would make sure that all your people are cross-trained across your business. If you're comfortable enough, you're at a size or capability where let's say you're in the MEP trades. If you have a residential service side or an industrial service side to your business, but you also do commercial work, make sure your folks are cross-trained to be able to do the service work. Service work's not going to go away. People are always going to need that service work. Can you deploy another truck or crew out there to do service work versus lay them off? They can drive revenue in a different cash flow model. If you don't have that capability yet, or it's not something you're out, maybe that's something you start doing. Maybe you can keep your best talent in a scenario where something doesn't work on a commercial side.
Let me just make a couple of different points there. I just want to highlight some words. The first one is discipline. It's easy when things are going well, we tend to get a little loose and easy. We tend to say, this is great, it's going to go on forever. We forget the last recession and we just build. We do need to be disciplined. And that goes back to the first thing you were talking about with the cash flow tool. The second one, again, I want to make this word really clear, and that's that flexibility with the cross-training. That flexibility is absolutely essential. And if you are a mechanical contractor out there, now is the time to really emphasize those special projects and that service aspect of your business that can really help you to smooth out some of those dips that are going through with the recession. What other strategies did you have there, Scott?
The other thing I have that is really critical is what not to do. What not to do to solve an issue like that is borrow new money to pay your labor because you need to keep those people on. If something like what you're talking about here is triggered, a recession, if a recession or something macroeconomically is triggering this type of thing, the last thing you want to do to your business is put new debt on it to solve what otherwise is a bridge. You also want to be very disciplined not to use all of your cash surpluses or your retained earnings to do that either, because that's the nest egg you might need to downsize, survive through a downturn. Maybe it's move your business to a better geographical area if that's your choice. If it looks like it's not going to come back quickly, you have to make those decisions. But borrowing new debt in these type of environments to solve a problem that like a bridge of labor, those are the things I've personally seen put businesses out of businesses. They put them in one thing, put them in a bad situation, but that choice is what put them out of business. I'd be really careful taking on new debt to solve those type of issues. Let
me address this because there's something interesting here, and I'd like to tap into your experience working with contractors. One of the biggest challenges that a lot of contractors have, one is it's not necessarily economically related, but they hold on to people too long because they hope they're going to change. They don't get rid of people who aren't a fit in their business. And everyone struggles with that. But what you're talking to here is a little different species of that, because I feel this obligation as a construction company owner to keep my guys on because I'm impacting them and their family and all those kinds of things. How do I, as a business owner, get into the right mental space to be able to lay people off and to go through that process and not to wait too long to where it damages the business in such a way that perhaps I have a real challenge recovering?
Well, I think you and I could do probably an entire episode on that. Where I'll go with that is twofold. I'll give you the quick short term. Number one, as a business owner, your number one priority to the business is to survive, no matter what. If your number one priority is to survive, you have to make tough decisions sometimes. It might mean picking some of your team members, not all of your team members. And you might have to have tough conversations that you haven't had before. That's what you have to do in the immediate scenario. Yes, you did make a commitment to those employees. And yes, it's going to suck to have to let somebody go, particularly if it's people you don't want to let go or you really wish you could keep and they didn't do anything wrong. There's nothing worse than that. But you have to make sure that your business can survive and you can always hire those people back. That's the first thing in that moment. Now, prior to getting in that moment, as a business owner, you hear a lot of people say sometimes, like, I just want to get to a certain size and then I'll stay right there. It's comfortable. Or we're doing great right now, so I'm going to take a little bit of a break. The hardest truth is your business is either growing or dying. There is no steady. Now, does that mean some businesses just stay steady at 5 million or 10 million or whatever level they're at a year in annualized sales? Sure. But that doesn't mean that they might be growing every year, but they're also losing. Whatever they gain, they lose. You have to continue to grow because those employees and your team members, they need to grow too. They have their own goals and ambitions. If you're thinking about it big picture wise, if you had grown your business and you expanded your service lines, it gets back to something you and I did, Eric. If in the good times, you had built a service line to handle residential or handle industrial service, you'd have a lot more tools available to you now to handle this problem versus cutting people. The first thing you need to do is proactively think about these environments when you're in the good times. Continue to grow your business, continue to expand, continue to bring on people and talent and bring them up. Don't try to control everything. You have to start to delegate tasks. You have to start to give responsibility. You have to build good systems and processes. These are all those things you have to do proactively in the good times so that you have a lot more options available to you as a business owner in the bad. But if you haven't done those things yet, your number one goal, to answer your question in the most concise way, is your number one responsibility is for the business to survive.
And it's interesting, the word there again, I like that word, options. And it's so tough as human beings because when things are going well, we're patting ourselves on the back. We're thinking, man, I must be totally awesome. And that's why it's going so great. When it might just be that, there's a tide that's rising and I'm one of the ships on the tide and up I go. And during those times when I do have perhaps mental space and I have emotional space to think about how I can be developing my business long term and preparing for those inevitable ups and downs, that's the time to increase optionality by looking at how I can develop my business, both from the perspective of the processes and from the perspective of the types of projects that I'm building.
Another thing you can do in the downturn, you don't have to be all by yourself. You just made me think that you don't have to make this decision in a box. Go talk to the other business owners that are your competitors, the people that you fight tooth and nail with, and say, hey, look, man, this is tough. Maybe you're having the same scenarios. Maybe you're not. I don't know. But I'm going to have to let 2 or 3 people go here in the next week that I don't necessarily want to let go of because I need to keep my business and do a good job and maintain. And I want to make sure that I give them a good landing spot. Any other competitive business has people they would love to replace with good talent. There's always a position. Why not reach out to them and say, let me help you? Yeah, they're your competition, but they're really not. In the great world of everything else, yeah, you're going to compete. You're going to win some, they're going to win some, you're going to lose, and so forth. But why not help them? You're helping your team member. And now you have loyalty built across competitive natures. So you just don't need that. It can work. I know it might be contrary to your thought process, but I promise that's not a bad strategy at all. It's actually very good.
Manscaped. No, don't worry. I'm not doing a commercial for Manscaped. One time though, Manscaped contacted me and they said, hey, Eric, we want to sponsor your show. I thought about it for a moment and I'm such a dignified individual. I couldn't bring myself to talking about Manscaped's products. But instead, I'm going to talk about my book. And my book is awesome. It's Construction Genius, effective, hands-on, practical, simple, no BS leadership, strategy, sales, and marketing advice for construction companies. You might be asking, Eric, where did you get such a title? I got it directly from one of my clients who took one of my leadership courses online. And he told me, Eric, your stuff is effective, hands-on, practical, simple, and no BS. That's what you get from my book. You should go out to Amazon and you should purchase a copy for yourself and every leader in your organization. And if you purchase 10 or more copies, then all you need to do is contact me directly. Email eric@constructiongenius.com and let me know that you bought 10 or more copies, and I will come in via Zoom for an hour and do a Q&A on the book and provide you some bonus training for your leadership team. I would charge $2,500 for a session like that normally, but if you buy 10 copies, it'll cost you less than $200 to bring me in. And that is a killer deal. Go out, get your books, and bring me in, and we're going to have an awesome time. Let's get back to my conversation with Scott. Obviously, we're competing all day, every day with our competition, but then you see those relationships that folks build over the years. And again, as we go through these cycles, when it's down, we think it's going to be the end of the world forever. When it's up, we think it's going to be the awesomeness forever. But those ups and downs, and if you're playing that long-term game, having that type of relationship with someone, there's that reciprocation that happens. Perhaps when you're not doing well and your competition helps you in some way at some point when they're not doing well, when you may be there to help them. And so that reciprocation goes back and forth.
Yeah. And the human that you helped, by the way, the team member that you're worried about, you're not going to help them if you keep them on your company for an extra month or two, and then the world comes to an end and now you're in a terrible spot. But think about how much you are helping them. Yeah, this isn't the spot here at this business for you now, but which isn't your fault. But I actually called our competitor and they have a great spot for you that you can work at. And now you have built a loyalty and affiliation where you've shown and proven not only to that individual, but the rest of your team individual that, you know what, you don't have that ego. You're going to help them even in bad times, and you're honest. That is only going to help you. I promise. It's not going to hurt.
That's great. I really appreciate that. Let's dive into this a little bit more. I know one of the main issues that lots of contractors struggle with is maximizing the efficiency of their labor, even finding labor. As you're looking at the environment, as you've been involved in conversations with contractors, what are your perspectives? What are you seeing in terms of what are some best practices related to labor?
This past Tuesday, we had a live event here in Tampa. We put a panel together with our local ABC chapter, and we had private developer on there building things like airports, single tenant, multi-tenant type things. We had 2 general contractors, large general contractor that does multiple billions of dollars a year. And then we had another small regional contractor does really well in and around our city of Tampa. And then we had a government prime that works for the state of Florida and HUD doing FEMA projects. And then we had a large mechanical contractor on the panel. And we decided we were going to tackle labor and construction, okay? Let me tell you what came out of that, coupled with the 130 guests we had in the audience, which were made up of primarily subcontractors, maybe some banks, sureties, and ancillary others, folks that would service the construction world. But what came out of it is there's an aging population. I don't think anyone will disagree with that. The average age in construction now is older than the median, okay? So that's going to lead to a problem. What we need to do is a few things came out of that. One, we need to start telling a lot better story about the construction industry, the opportunities in it, what kinds of things you can do, where you can do them, how you can enter the construction industry, and where you can go inside of that. That's first. Second, the population that we're trying to appeal to, those folks that are 16, 17, 18, and up to 30, they're living in a little bit different environment. The internet is out. They see things. They're visual. They want to understand what the videos and comments. You have to go to social media and not advertise your business. You have to go to social media and tell stories about your business. Show them what you're doing. It's not just a shovel digging a ditch, okay? It's driving a cool tractor. What is the income associated to that? Being out, putting huge pipe in, managing a crane, managing a crew, a leader, how someone left high school. Within 2 years, they were making X amount of dollars. And within the next 2 years, they were promoted to this leadership position. And now they're making this much money and that much money. You tell a real story that someone else can see on their path. Someone coming out of high school doesn't think, oh, college or military. And of course, there's more options than that. I'm not trying to say be open real, but what I'm saying is there's a lot more options. And a lot of these folks are much more conscious that college might not be for them. And not only that, but college might not be for them right now. Maybe they want to work for 3 or 4 years and then know what they want to do and then go to college. And maybe they want to do that online, or maybe they don't want to go somewhere else to do it. Maybe they think going to college just to have fun and party is awesome. But you know what? They also realize that's going to come at a huge price tag, and they're not going to get real benefit from it. And at the same time, this industry is way more open to hiring people without a college education and promoting them and training them and teaching them and educating them. Why aren't we talking about that? Those are the big things that came out of that event. And each of them talked about that in a different way, in the economics, how much you can make. I don't think people realize you can make 6 figures really quickly and pretty fast in the construction world.
That's really true, that the idea of the stories, both on just crafting the stories and then where you go to tell those stories. I'm on LinkedIn all the time, and I see some contractors who are really making a push to tell those stories and to do so in such a way that it makes it more attractive. And I do think that monetary aspect. I was talking to a guy yesterday. It was really funny because he's like, yeah, man, I was a total knucklehead in high school, and I followed my girlfriend up to Sacramento and ended up going to Sac State, went through the CM program, and man, I'm so pumped up about how my career has taken off. And now we're hiring people out of Sac State who do have that college degree, and they're getting $75,000, $80,000 just right out of the gate as a project engineer. And then on the labor side, like you were saying, there's this wonderful high school that just opened up in Sacramento. It's the Capital College and Career Academy. And what they're doing is they're really making that re-emphasis at the high school level on the vocational arts and the vocational journey, and really looking to develop those high school students who can come out of high school already having some on-the-job experience with construction companies and stepping into those labor roles and really, like you were saying, getting to the point where they can be making six figures really quickly as they get their qualifications and as they move in with some of those great companies.
The other thing that came out is supporting your local STEM programs, your vocational schools, the organizations that are entering into the high schools to show exactly what you just mentioned. They're meeting those kids where they're at. They're showing them what they can do. They're educating them to it, promoting the ability to be an entrepreneur and start your own business if you'd like, what that entails. All of those organizations and trades and groups and organizations that are supporting the drive to do that and meeting those kids where they're at is something you should support with your dollars in your local community. You can't just complain about it nationally online. Go support financially those things. Support it with your time. Go to the schools. Like, you have to grab these folks where they're at as they're growing, and you can't expect them to learn it in one 5-minute talk. Go let it drip on them over the course of their last 2 years of high school as they're coming out. Those are the key things, I think, and that'll really help folks. There's so many cool things to do. I mean, you can enter construction anywhere you want and be a laborer the whole time. You can be a project manager. You can graduate to a superintendent. You can own your own business. You can own a public company. You can go into operations. You can go into finance. The whole industry offers everything at every level.
You said something that I just want to make a note about a little earlier. This idea of kids going to college, they haven't figured it out. It's like extended high school. They're just partying and it's a waste of time. And if we can tell that story, listen, dude, you're 18. You don't know what you want to do yet. Why don't you go and start working for a construction company, get out into the field. You'll make some pretty decent money for an 18-year-old. And if after 2 or 3 years, you think, man, construction's for me, if you go to college and get a CM degree, plus you have field experience, when you walk onto the job site as a project engineer, you're not going to be some dude who the foreman or the superintendents look at and say, this is just another college guy who thinks he knows everything and he doesn't know nothing. But you've actually had some experience out in the field, and that'll be immediately apparent as you're working with folks. It's a really wonderful thing to think about there.
I have a real story for that. I was just talking to one of my buddies yesterday, and his son-in-law was an Army Ranger. He was in the military. He got injured. He came out, went to Colorado State University, got a construction engineering degree. He then went and started working for Hensel Phelps. He met my buddy's daughter, and they're getting married, and they're going to move back to Tampa. Eric, do you know how many jobs this guy has being offered to him by every single construction company you can imagine? Like, think about that. He has 4 years in the military, maybe, before he got hurt. Then construction engineering, then right to Hensel Phelps, to your point right there. There's the experience, college, right to a great job. Now, experience there, and he's moving across the country. Not a job hopper. He's got married. He's moving to where she lives, okay? Everybody, Beck Construction, J.E. Dunn, Hensel Phelps here. I mean, every single company he could get an interview with and probably get offered by, and he's going to have a great offer.
Another thing, and you said this very well, I want to go back and talk about the Capital College and Career Academy out here in Sacramento. It was a really hard lift for the folks here. The guy who started it all, his name is Kevin Dobson, and he's the founder and executive director. And he was a high school principal, and he had to really grind to get this charter school established in Sacramento because, to put it nicely, the teachers union wasn't exactly supportive of a charter school being established. But the wonderful thing is that going back to your thought about let's not just complain about the labor shortage, let's do something about it. A lot of the local contractors in this area have been tremendously committed to funding and supporting the academy. And that really has made a difference because they're putting their money where their mouth is and really getting down at the grassroots level and making a long-term commitment to developing this academy that they can hopefully develop a pipeline of labor coming out of it for their companies.
To solve a real problem. Here we are. You got a teachers union that doesn't want to support a charter school. And I'm sure the teachers union probably has a mission to serve children and kids and take them to a better place in the world. And then not only that, but the more kids you teach and educate and the more your city grows, the more you're going to need schools. Well, who builds the schools? Wouldn't it be great to have a charter school full of young kids who didn't necessarily want to go to college and wanted to get in the trades to learn how to do that so you can build the next school? It's really ironic. But in construction, you can't just let somebody else fix that problem. Don't make it the teachers union problem. Don't make it this one individual's problem. Support people. Support the initiative to teach and educate the kids. That helps the teachers union. Support the guy or gal or group of people that are trying to create a charter school to solve us, to meet certain kids at a certain place that for their path and get involved. And you can pour into both places. You don't have to choose. You can still offer help to both sides of that equation. And that's perfect for construction.
And you know what's really cool? It's interesting. I'm just on the website here of that academy, and I'm looking at their board of directors. And they have this killer combination of union and non-union contractors. They actually have unions involved. They have a university involved. They have some government entities involved. They've done a really good job bringing together diverse people from different parts of the industry to pour into this particular academy and lay that foundation for a future flow of labor into their businesses. It's tremendous.
And see, that's smart because high tide raises all boats in that scenario. It doesn't need to be a controversy at all.
That's great. Let's pivot. I know we wanted to cover this idea of policies, and we're already beginning to talk about it. And again, we live in a world where we're getting bombarded by information and political opinions and all these kinds of things. But when it comes to business, we're looking to influence, and we're obviously impacted by policies in different states, different geographies. How can a contractor be on the front foot in terms of understanding how the policies impact his or her business and also understanding how to influence those things in any way possible?
That's an interesting one. Let's go through it to start. First and foremost, you have to realize that who our leaders are really matter because they influence the policy. What really matters most is the policies that are in place. Who impacts the policies are the people that are there to serve us. The problem, though, that exists, and particularly right now, and this is my own opinion, I'm not saying every local government, but certainly our national government is not necessarily, in my opinion, here to serve the people. Gone a little too far of them serving themselves or overstepping in what they can do. And some of these policies are getting wrapped up. But how that impacts construction is you have to realize that when you make a choice as to who you want to put in place, you also have to choose what are you electing someone for what issues? And if you choose certain issues to vote for or support, that's all okay. But you have to understand that the implication of that is these same individuals all have certain opinions on policies that are economic or financial. It doesn't matter who you vote for. It's your right. You can choose however you want to vote and under whatever circumstances you want to vote. But you can't pretend that they're not tied together because they are. That's first. And I would also say for construction, don't get wrapped up in the national elections because those aren't the ones that are going to impact you, really. They're just not. And if anyone that's not in construction watching this, that goes for you too. It's your local elections that are going to impact you the most. Now, nationally, policies can matter. They can certainly impact recessions and financial security and the nation's security and the labor and all those things. But you can directly impact your local market better. I think you need to get involved. You need to pay attention. You certainly need to be voting in your local elections and finding out who's going to support the policies or who is supporting policies or ideas that are going to help you in construction. That's first and foremost. If you don't know who those people are, I think it's really important for you to go figure that out. If you don't want to do that at all, the next thing you can do is get involved with the federal programs and become a federal contractor, work for the federal government. You can bifurcate what I just said and try to stay in the federal government program, and then you can ride or die on a national election and federal policies and things like that. That's an entirely different animal, and if you're not a federal contractor and you don't know what you're doing there's a road to that and a hurdle to climb that you also want to try to make sure you're aware of. That's not a quick pivot.
There's a number of different things that you can do. One of the things that you have to really reflect on is, again, the market that you're in, the people who are influencing the policies locally that will then impact you in terms of the types of projects that you can do. There's a real sense that you've got to show up and you've got to kind of stick around and build relationships with people. Because I think sometimes when it comes to policies, you made a good point, people are making policies. And we tend to think of policy sometimes as something that is outside of the people who've made them. But it certainly isn't. And so if I can get into those relationships with people and build them over time, and perhaps it's through your local associations or whatever the case may be, that then can help me to have at least some kind of influence on the policies that are being made and that affect my business. Let's just summarize here and wrap up. We've talked about recession. We've talked about some of the aspects of how to influence flow of labor. We've talked about policies and how you can get involved in impacting that as well. If you were to give a contractor, particularly let's talk about the subcontractors, and you're an expert in terms of cash flow, if you were to give a contractor 2 or 3 takeaways in uncertain times to really focus on in terms of their cash flow, what would those 2 or 3 takeaways be as we're wrapping up the episode here, Scott?
thinking through depends on where you're at, what kind of contractor you are, what geographical location, what's going on. But if I were to come through two things, they really go back to the basics. If your game's not tight, you got to tighten up your game. When your game's tight and you have access to all the information, financially, people, you can make a lot better decisions. What do I mean by that? You want to know what are your financials? And that means what are your numbers? What does it cost you to run your business today at this revenue level? What will it cost you to run it at a certain level higher, a certain level lower? Which people and positions are the most effective for you now that are absolute necessary and must? And which ones maybe you have some overlap. Maybe you've made some investments in certain people and things and industry or revenue centers or new sectors. Maybe they haven't panned out yet. Maybe you've stretched them a little farther than you want to. But those investments, which are perfectly fine, if they haven't materialized yet, it might be time to look at those if you're going to go into a downturn. Start analyzing. You want to get tight, to call it. And again, if you don't know what I'm talking about, or you do know what I'm talking about, but you're like, how do I go figure that out? You want to make sure that your financial infrastructure is set up. You have to have great systems and processes in place to understand your numbers. I was just talking to a friend of mine. He's got a fairly large luxury home builder here, residential. Not a client. We don't do anything in the residential market, but I was talking to him. And his controller has not got his books. She's about 3 months behind on his books. And by the way, she was way behind on the books, which means he's way behind on the books when doing taxes in 21 and 22. And I said to him, look, man, if you don't get control over that and you're not getting your numbers, your income statement, your balance sheet, your quote unquote financials that you look at every month, that's a business owner's report card. If you don't care about what your grades are, then really, what do you care about? And if you can't get those numbers and you don't have those numbers, it's impossible for you, as great as you are, as educated as you are, to make the best decision because you don't have the data in front of you. You got to get that stuff in place, and it's so important. So do that immediately is what I would say. The second thing is I would really start to look at where are your most productive service revenue lines coming from, what things macroeconomically can impact them, and which ones can't. If you're a plumber and you have a bunch of trucks with crews on them running around doing service calls, it doesn't matter if there's a recession or not. If someone's toilet's clogged, they're calling a plumber. If you're an electrician and the power goes out, boom. But you might not need to do the large or private commercial construction project. If you're a plumber, that's a part of your business. You might want to invest more dollars into the service side that you know is going to build up and support your business, and you can maintain that no matter what if you're going to invest some new dollars. So those are the kinds of decisions you want to start making. Then I would really start to think about where your financial relationships are. I would get your credit lines in place. I would use your access to credit. Make sure you're building relationships with your lenders. If you have debt out there now, start to build relationships with them, get in front of them, talk about the things you're going to need, talk about the things that you're trying to accomplish, and really start to build a good rapport. Those are the two things I would do.
Excellent. So tell us a little bit more about you, Scott, about mobilization funding, how people can get in touch with you.
Best ways to find us is on our LinkedIn, either my personal LinkedIn, the Mobilization Funding LinkedIn, or our YouTube channel, which is Mobilization Funding on YouTube. We have a great podcast also called Construction MFers. We post those on our YouTube channel. They're also on every other place you can find our podcast. But what Mobilization Funding does, Eric, is we work with construction subcontractors, other businesses too, manufacturing and fabrication, but really a strong construction. And what we do is we help commercial subcontractors execute work by analyzing their cash flow in advance on a specific project, showing them where the cash flow deficits are, and then becoming a source of that capital they can use to go from the start of a project to pay for project-related expenses, including labor, materials, equipment, to the point in which the project cash flows itself. Imagine being able to take on a job without taking the financial stress into your normal operating budget, and then running that job to the point where it pays for itself or it cash flows itself by borrowing from us, utilizing it where you need it, when you need it, and then paying us back as you're paid.
That's excellent. Wonderful. And why don't you just mention your book as well? I know it's something that people have really benefited from.
And I did write a book. It came out published earlier this year. It's called The Big Book of Cash Flow. It is 90 pages of just the basics of what you need. If you're listening to some of this conversation, you're like, man, I just don't want to know. Well, what is financial infrastructure? What is an income statement good for? Balance sheet? How do I use one? And you just, as a business owner, you got into the trades because you're great at the trades. And then you got into business because you wanted to get into business. But you know what? You never picked up the other finance side of it. That's a critical piece. This is a great book for you. It's going to be able to give you 95% of what you need to know. You can hire the rest. You'll be smart. You'll understand what you need to know about cash flow projections and what they'll do for you. You'll be able to understand what this statement can do and what decisions you can make off of it. And more importantly, it'll just water down and gives you all the answers to what things you might be afraid to ask because you feel like you should already know, so therefore you don't want to ask. This book's just a quick, easy hitting read. I got great charts in there. There's great tools. All the free tools that we utilize are in that book as well that you can access directly off our website on our resource page. More importantly, it's just a quick, easy read that can get you the education you need and give you a good, sustainable piece to make you feel comfortable with asking questions and knowing what's right, what's wrong, etc.
What about if you're looking to educate your project managers and your project engineers on cash flow and that they kind of get an idea of what you're talking about? Is this a book that would be beneficial for them?
It's perfect for anybody. Honestly, it's perfect for any business owner or anyone in any leadership. One of the most important things that I think is critical to construction, if we were diving all the way into finance, is making sure that the business owner, the accounting group, and the project managers are all on the same page when you're driving a project, because all the cash makes a big decision. If your project managers and your accounting team or your staff or your controllers are working together on a routine basis in a meeting, that means the project manager can always communicate, hey, this is running ahead, this is running behind. The accountants can then decide, not your accountants, but your finance folks can decide where and how to spend cash. And you can help execute the decisions as the leader. This book is perfect for anyone that's in project superintendent, all the way to project manager and all the way up the chain. It's just clean, clear, and easy, and construction related.
I want to make that point because there's a lot of griping that goes on from the field to the office when the office is making some decisions based on cash flow that the field doesn't maybe quite understand. And if they can at least have that vocabulary, then maybe those gripes can be alleviated a little bit.
That's right. And all those like acronyms that you feel like you don't know, they're in there. I told you what they are. What's the difference between margin? What's the difference between markup? How do you calculate each? Why should you use one versus the other? What does the controller care about? What does the project manager care about? What does the owner care about? And how are they all related? All that stuff is in that book. Easy, simple. It's written the way I talk, so it'll be easy to read.
Nice. Those are the best kinds of books. We don't have time for flower. It's funny. I read books sometimes from like the 19th century. It's funny. I talk to my son. I say, listen, dude, read your paper out loud and see if it makes sense out loud, because if it doesn't, then you need to rewrite it.
There's no big words in there that I don't know how to say. I doubt you'll have to grab the dictionary or the Google machine and look any of them up. But I know what you're talking about, Eric. When I read some of these books and I have to look up one word per page, it's exhausting. I can't just skim over because I don't know what the word means. Sometimes I never even heard it before.
I know, that's funny. At times that's really useful actually because it does expand. But when it comes to business and we're looking to get down to the nut so that we can move forward, simple is best.
Simple is best. No doubt.
Awesome. We're going to link in the show notes then to the book and to Scott's websites. Scott, thank you for your generosity coming back on Construction Genius and wish you all the best.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. And guys, if we helped here, please jump on our YouTube channel. Click a little subscribe for us there. We're trying to put a lot of good work and content out there, and I'd love to connect with you guys.
That's great. Yeah, if that YouTube game is essential. I know my YouTube game sucks a little bit, but I'm going to just encourage you to go out to Scott's YouTube channel and click subscribe. And while you're doing that, feel free to go to mine and click subscribe too. Right on.
There's great content there. We're putting lots of great information, easy, quick answers. There's all kinds of amazing guests, webinars, all those live events we were talking about. You can go see that whole live event I just mentioned. It'll be on our YouTube channel next week. We just did it on Tuesdays.
That's awesome. Yes, I've just gone over to Mobilization Funding. It's at Mobilization Funding on YouTube. I've just subscribed. Scott's at, listen, let's just get real here. Scott's at 573 subscribers, and you can tell the value that he provides here on the podcast is worth way more than 573. So get out there and let's get those subscribers up on his YouTube channel.
Thanks, Eric. I appreciate it, man. And thank you, everybody, for listening. I appreciate you giving us the time. And it's awesome to come back and welcome. And I'm going to have you on our show now that you be a construction MFer. We'll get you the hat. We'll get you the whole kit and caboodle.
That'd be sweet, man. Get me on your podcast. That'd be sweet. I'd enjoy that. Thanks a lot, man.
All right. Thanks, Eric. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye. Hey, this is Eric. Thank you for listening to my conversation with Scott, and I enjoyed that. Lots of practical takeaways there. We're really talking about a mindset as far as your company is concerned. You got to be on the front foot. We are entrepreneurs, we're leaders, and so we're always looking to improve the way that we run our businesses from a cash flow perspective, from a people perspective, and even doing our best to influence those policies on a local basis. Feel free to check out his website, check out his book. I really like that idea, actually, that we talked about at the end, where you buy the book and you have your junior people read it, that they can get a real sense of what the dynamic of cash is in your business. They can get a sense of the vocabulary involved with cash management, that when there are decisions made that influence them or impact them, they have better understanding about those decisions. Go out there, check out the links in the show notes, and have a great day. Feel free to give the show a rating or a review wherever you get your podcasts. Really appreciate you listening to Construction Genius, and let's go kick some butt.